Hey there, Dave Paulides, canammissing project, another copyrighted edition for our video page. You can follow me at Twitter at David Paulides at canammissing, and you can follow us at our website at Can-Am, like Canadian American, canammissing.com, and all of the books, movies, all the listings for us are on this site under the first comment on this video. We've got a very full program today. Wind's blowing at about 50 miles an hour out there, and I dread what is happening to the fires in Idaho right now because wind is horrific on fires. We're doing pretty good in Montana on fires, but Idaho still has some huge winds. So does California, that are out of control. There's one fire right now just north of Redding that went from 1 acre to, I think it was 3 square miles right now. So I'm worried about that. Shasta National Forest, an area I know really well. But a couple things to start off with. I got an email from an individual that just broke my heart. And it involves a young man named Nathaniel Christian Peters. They called him Nate. Let me read this to you. He was born August 19, 2004 to Paige and Adam Peters in Ogden, Utah, while Adam was in residency to be a physician. He moved with his parents to Cody, Wyoming in 2007 at the age of 2. He attended Eastside Elementary School and he was in the GATE program. There he had excellent teachers who noticed his quick learning ability and helped facilitate that. He attended Cody Middle School and had just started his junior year at Cody High School. Nate was soft-spoken and always very kind and aware of others. He was intelligent and a motivated self-starter. Played the guitar every night and he was very good with the recorder. He also played with the piano, and his favorite song to play was The Entertainer. I'm going to finish reading this, but I want you to take a look at Nate. He was teaching himself German, Spanish, and Russian. He had a 165-day streak in Duolingo. He had also started taking Spanish 4 at Cody High School. He was fascinated by history, particularly the history of wars. He loved playing video games with his friends. His favorite games were Escape from Tarkov and DayZ. He liked the bands Green Day and Linkin Park. He loved the outdoors, caging animals, and hunting. He was inactive in the Boy Scouts and was a life scout. He went on backpacking trips with his dad and brothers every summer. He was a superb freestyle skier. Nate knew how to work hard. He worked 2 summers at the George farm. He wore his mom down and she finally allowed him to buy a dirt bike with the money he had earned from working. He loved animals, and every time he walked in the door, he would baby talk to the cat. Nate was an active member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and he tried his best to follow the teachings of Christ. No amount of words can describe who Nate was. The world was a better place because he was here. Nate's life ended too soon on Thursday, August 26, 2021. He was very, very loved by his parents, Adam and Paige, and by his siblings, Max, Jane, Tad, and Ty. A couple things about Nate. He took his own life. Cody is a very small town. His dad was the physician, a family physician in the town. Nate took his life on Ben's birthday, August 26th. As I've told you many times, this COVID thing, there's much more to it than what we know. Nate was a good soul. You could just tell. Cared about people. He was doing well. He was smart. And he was loved by his family. What happened? I have great compassion for his parents and his family and his friends. I don't like talking about this too much, but know that they are in my prayers. I want you to pray for them too. And we've got to remember that mental illness is slowly taking some of the smartest, brightest people we know. And that is a crisis. Another article came in. It's from Fort Myers, Florida. It said the demand on college campuses for mental health counseling is growing so quickly that schools are struggling to meet the need. This is on Wink News. More than 40% of college students are experiencing depression. The trends Florida Gulf Coast University is seeing are on par with colleges around the rest of the country that include an increase in anxiety, depression, and relationship issues, and an overall increase in their distress index. Staff say they do the best they can with the team they have, but they've never had a wait list around like they have now. Experts say things have been heading this way for at least the past decade, but the pandemic has no doubt accelerated the trend. Florida Gulf Coast University Counseling and Psychological Services saw a 50% increase in calls to the crisis line this August compared to last. The staff feel the demand for mental health services is only going to go up. The issue for me is whatever we've been doing hasn't been either enough or the right thing. Or something's overcome what we've put in its path. Something needs to change drastically. The number one thing is that we got to get rid of COVID. We've got to get that behind us. We've got to let the young people know that life goes on, that they're not going to have to live in their home and they can't go to school and they can't go to dances and they can't go to sporting events. That's got to end. We've got to lead our lives. Thank you. Now, I'm going to tell you a story. This comes from a really, really good friend who I've known for a long, long time. Ultra credible, smart, and I almost fell off my chair when he told me this just the other day. He said, Dave, I'm only telling two people, my wife and you. And maybe you can ask your audience if they've ever heard of anything like this. And my buddy said for the last several years, he'd be driving down the road and he'd look at somebody in the car next to him and they'd nod, smile. And then he said within a few seconds, their face would just melt away and the car would drive on without him. He said the first time it happened, he couldn't believe what he saw. Now you got to remember, this guy is as solid as a rock. So he's not mentally disturbed. He said, okay, so I saw that the first time. And he goes, I just kind of sucked it up. Maybe I didn't see what he saw, but the car went on and I didn't say anything. This is about a week later, he's driving behind him. And he's on a lonely stretch of highway and there's a car right behind him and he says he could see a figure behind the wheel. He says a second later I turned back and there's nothing behind me for miles and the car's gone. So he goes, well, maybe I missed it. Maybe it turned off. Maybe it did something. But he said it's happened to him dozens of times where he just turns, looks, and a second later he looks back and the car's gone. And as far as the faces of the people melting away, he says it's happened to him like many times in the last 3 years. And he said he's done a little research and he can't find where that's been replicated by others or talked about. He says, hey, Dave, could you talk to your audience and see if they've ever heard of anything like this? I said, sure, because I haven't. And he said, it doesn't happen when he's with others. It happens only when he's alone. I can tell it bothers him. It bothered me. And we talked about it for quite some time. And he knows that I'm not going to judge on it, and I'm not going to call him out on it, and I'm going to listen, and I'm going to take it serious. I did go back through MUFON journals looking for something in that UFO realm that might be associated with that. I couldn't find anything. He's had no other outside issues as far as nightmares or other weird things happening to him, but those are the two strangest. So, if you've had something like that, send me an email at missing411@yahoo.com, and I'll forward it on to him. All right, on to the letters, and there are some good ones this week. This one's about Gettysburg and granite. I know your time is limited, so I'd like to get right to the point I would like to say. Okay, good point right at the beginning. So, please, as I said last week, don't send me any more long emails. They're going to be put in a pile and they're going to be read sometime in the future, but I don't have the time to read them. And it's unfortunate. I can get to most of the emails if they're short, and if you just tell me what you're trying to explain or tell me the basics behind your story, I'll tell you if we're interested in hearing more about it, and I'll respond. If not, don't be frustrated, but I'm just overwhelmed. I should be finding times to do some other things, and I'm not. It's kind of crushing me at this point. And I do have help, but a lot of this stuff needs to be done by me, like sitting right here. And the prep work to do these. It's not easy, it's not fast, and it takes a lot of time. And then the research itself, even though there's other people helping me with it, the bottom line is when the job needs to get done and there's nobody around, I'm always the one that does it. That's just the way it is. So, okay, I know your time is limited, so I'd like to get right to where I'd like to say. But first, I cannot begin without expressing a little human compassion to you over Ben's loss. My heart goes out to you each time I see tears, sadness well up in your eyes in your videos, which I have watched every one from your inception. I hope all of his memories will always bring you joy and comfort. May God bless you. Thank you. In one of your recent videos, you were discussing the mysterious loss of power and draining of device batteries in areas around granite boulders. I live close to and have spent a lot of time on the Gettysburg battlefield over many years, and have had numerous experiences of unexplained paranormal occurrences there. One of the peculiarities of the area in and around Gettysburg and the battlefield are the extreme abundance of large granite boulders. For many years, not only has the battlefield had reports of paranormal activity, but also a substantial number of examples where the batteries of cameras and other electrical devices have inexplicably been drained of all power. Freshly charged spare batteries and those just inserted have failed to power up the devices and were completely dead upon examination. This has long been a phenomenon all over the battlefield. Every person familiar with Gettysburg has heard of the huge formation of boulders called Devil's Den. Devil's Den itself has had many reports of batteries being drained, but there is an area directly above and behind Devil's Den called the Triangular Field that has had more reports of power loss and electronics failures than anywhere else on the battlefield. Stop right there. There's quite a few locations in this world called Devil's Den besides Gettysburg. There's a place in Arkansas where I've written about a location called the same thing. And you wonder, I've said this in dozens of videos, you wonder how and why locations get their names. There's a reason. If you Google the Triangular Field, you will undoubtedly come across some of these reports. And you can also see its proximity to Devil's Den. A coincidence? I do not believe so. There's something beyond our understanding about the properties of granite. The significance of granite formations as one recurring factor in your case presentations is too great to be overlooked. One other significant factor is the proximity of water to the disappearances and the recoveries of those who have mysteriously gone missing and the few that are eventually found. We know that granite rock has piezoelectric properties and that water has the property of electrical conductivity. I'm not a physicist and cannot explain this scientifically, but I believe there are physical properties outside our understanding of Earth's physics where granite magnifies or supercharges electrical properties that, in concert with the nearby presence of water, forms an energy field that allows portals to open momentarily. I further suspect there are beings who have learned how to control and manipulate these forces that allow them to use these portals to kidnap people for their purposes. The instances when someone who looked away literally for just a second and then looked back to find a child or companion gone and missing, impossibly and inexplicably disappeared, suggest to me that there may be a time-space manipulation, and time are literally frozen and suspended briefly to capture someone who has been targeted for abduction. Our reality is then returned to normal with a target somehow gone or missing. I suspect that the frequency of weather events that hamper search recovery efforts for those gone missing is also a manipulated phenomenon. Snow and rain are both water-related events that could also possibly be manipulated as a cover. I would like to point out that just because we do not see granite boulders on the surface, they could be readily present below the surface and impacting disappearances in what appear to be granite-free locations. Great points. Really good. If you've never been in Yosemite Valley, you need to go. Because I don't know anywhere in the world that has more granite than that region of California. It's literally wall-to-wall granite. And when you're in the when you're in the valley, you're literally surrounded by granite. You look on all sides and every wall in that valley is granite. So I've had people tell me that when you put two magnets against each other, you can kind of feel them push against them. So in Yosemite, you're walking down the valley and you have these huge granite walls. And we don't understand it, but there may be some sensation of those walls on the floor and the people on the floor. Don't know. But again, for dozens of miles in every direction, it's just like that, wall-to-wall granite. Back to the letter. I have all of your books and videos, and have followed the 411 missing from almost the beginning of your reporting. I've tried repeatedly to make friends and family aware of this phenomenon without success. It's not covered to any extent in the media, so the public has no idea of just how frequent this is happening, despite the growing number of evidence that something unexplained is occurring. They think I'm off my rocker and I'm now labeled as a conspiracy theorist in my circle. Stop right there. You're not proposing any theory. You're giving them facts. So if they call you a conspiracy theorist, you got to call them out. Hey, that's bull. Don't call me something I'm not. And then educate them and say, you know that term conspiracy theorist? That was developed by the Central Intelligence Agency to demean people who had thoughts about UFOs. That's where it first started. So don't use that term to demean me. That's a governmental theory and statement. I'm sorry they're calling you that, by the way. So I share your frustration about trying to get the word out. Please keep doing what you have been doing and continue reporting these case histories. I'm sure governments, especially ours, knows more than what they are letting on. Thank you for what it do. Thank you for all you do that comes with sacrifices to your personal life. Thank you. Many people have said, Dave, it's pretty well understood what your life mission is. That would be to educate, inform, and save lives. I like that. Other people have said, well, Dave, maybe your mission is to work on the mental health issue in the U.S. And I think many of you need to understand that mental health is a cross-section of missing people. And many people have made that decision when they're in severe mental health stress, anxiety, that they disappear. So, short letter here. It's called The Helicopter Sound. In the early 90s, I was 22 or 23 at the time. I was deer hunting about 2 miles back in the woods. As I was sitting watching for deer, I heard a helicopter coming. The sound kept getting louder and louder, but as it got louder, it got deeper to the point I could feel the percussion from it. It was weird because I couldn't see a helicopter. Things were getting weird, and then a shot from a rifle rang out in the holler over from me, and the noise was gone. I decided it was time to leave. This happened in Pleasantville, Pennsylvania. I knew you wrote a story about a missing boy in Pleasantville and thought it was weird. Sorry for your loss. So, there's rumors that our government has the ability to make a helicopter have no sound. They've also had the ability to make them stealthy, so you can't see them, supposedly. So maybe they were flying a helicopter that made a lot of sound and they were trying to make it stealthy. Who knows? But thanks for the note. And I have written about Pleasantville, PA before. In Missing 411 Eastern U.S., there's probably 25 stories about missing people in Pennsylvania. Dear Dave, I'm in South Africa. I came across your channel quite by accident, and I began watching and became very interested in the topic of people disappearing under strange circumstances. My son is 22 and an avid hiker, a runner, and high achiever, and is studying maths and computer science at the university. He has always had a fascination for the outdoors, which tends to fit your profile about people who disappear inexplicably. I've been very clear to him about matters of personal safety, like not ever hiking or running alone. Stop. He needs to also always carry a personal locator beacon. Always. Back to the story. However, the first thing I want to mention is the topic of gut instinct. I read an autobiography by a soldier who had been in the elite service, and he commented that part of being a soldier is also knowing when to run away. I told my son this before he left for an overseas gap year aged 18. I told him if his instinct told him things weren't right, then leave. His first stop was New Zealand, where he worked for 6 months on a farm. He did many hikes and walked on trails in many mountainous regions. This he always did with his uncle or with friends, but on one occasion his uncle said he should go up the path by mountain bike on his own, and they would wait for him at the bottom. My son rode his bike up the path through the woods and with nobody else on his path. After a while, he found a clearing with old broken cars and shacks and caravans, and then he heard a voice. In that instant, his instinct told him that maybe he shouldn't supposed to find this place, as it was quite hidden away, well off the beaten track. So he turned and cycled away quickly back to the path before anybody from the settlement hidden in the woods saw him. I told him he had done the right thing. Listen to your gut. On his return to South Africa after traveling overland from Kenya with a tour group, he asked to take a Swiss friend to a local mountain range called the Drakensberg Dragon Mountains. They are quite beautiful. They were set to hike for 5 days, and we were to drop them off at the start of the Giant's Cup Trail, but the weather was grim. There was heavy rain, and I got a bad feeling. Acting on that bad feeling, I refused to leave them at the start of the trail and instead drove them to the rest house for the first leg of the hike and left them there so they could start the following day, which was day 2 of the trail, was better weather. The Swiss friend was very easygoing and prepared, however, to do the first leg in the rain so as not to inconvenience me, but I said absolutely not. I found her very trusting, and I have found this with young people from the developed world of Europe and the USA, and that is that they are inclined to be very trusting, when maybe they could be a bit more cautious. Turns out that was a good move because there was a thunderstorm later, and the only bunch of hikers walking the trail were struck by lightning on the first leg of the hike. 2 were hit directly but survived. I know my son and his Swiss friend most likely would have either joined their party or been struck or would have been involved in helping with the rescue had I left them, against my gut instinct and at the start of the hike on that rainy day. The second thing I want to mention is Call of the Wild. My son has a friend who is well liked in private nature. He told his parents he wanted to be left at a lake to fish and live off the land, and he would make his way home through the Wild Gorge, which is a nature reserve all by himself. He wanted no help and nobody else with him. He was age 18 at the time. The parents were quite surprised by his wishes, but they let him do this as they saw it as a quest for independence. Well, he got very disoriented, became lost after one night alone. He phoned his mom with his cell phone and said he had no idea where he was. His mother was crying with distress when she related the story to me. The parents located him within a few hours, but the bottom line is it is impossible to get lost there in that valley. Impossible. You have to be blind to get lost, and he is not blind. He was not suicidal. He had somehow been drawn into the wild and was wandering alone and got disoriented for some reason. We didn't know if he was hunger, dehydration, or something else. The mother and her husband were very confused and concerned by this incident, not knowing what on earth was going on with their son. The son is a good person, a non-drinker, a non-drug user, and a great long-distance runner. After analysis, he had a brain scan, and it was found that his brain was anatomically different than the norm. One result was it meant that he could have fits when he was asleep without realizing it and get confused upon waking up. This then led to his getting disoriented and lost with the conclusion. Given the above, my feeling on the disappearance of people is, now, some of you may not have a good grasp of this topic. I get a lot of people who tell me, hey, I think I have it figured out why people disappear. I always just kind of giggle about that because I've been at this going on 11 years. I've written 10 books about it. I've researched probably 7,500 to 8,000 cases, and I've written about 1,500 cases. I've talked to search and rescue, sheriffs, victims, witnesses. So I doubt that there's anybody on this earth that knows more about this topic than me, and I'm not bragging, I'm just saying it's true. So when I hear that people have it, when they haven't even read the books, it's just, I kind of laugh. Now this lady has read the books and has been with me a long time, so let's hear what she has to say. 1, if a person expresses the wish to separate from a hiking group or to go it alone, that's a red flag. It might be the start of a psychosis or dehydration or hypothermia or maybe all three. It might be an indication their brain is not working as it should. Hikers must be educated to not let people go off on their own. Going off on your own may be an indication that the hiker's brain is compromised in some way. It may lead to death or injury or them getting lost. Number 2, animals like cats are known to wander off and isolate themselves by hiding, especially when they are going to die. Many people undergo psychological changes when alone in strange places. Some may feel for the first time anxious, afraid, or depressed in amounts that they have never felt before. Sometimes these feelings may overwhelm them, leading to panic, and that may lead to psychosis. And if they make a mistake and get lost, then panic sets in, and the panic makes them make more mistakes, and it becomes a vicious circle, which can lead to their demise. 3, lost people walk in forest, walk in circles if there is no path. This has happened to me. This is a lady talking. I meant to walk up a tree-covered slope, but instead I walked in a circle. There's something in the brain that makes a person do this. If the person was not originally in the spot covered by searchers and is then found near the point of departure in a place previously searched, it may be because they were walking in circles. Number 4, rocky ground means that people can't injure their ankles. The ground is not flat. If they're trying to look at the views while walking on rocks, they can twist and hurt their ankles or fall and hit their heads on rocks and vertigo. It may suddenly occur in a person who never had it before the cliff's edge, and they may fall. 5, lost children might be too scared to cry for help or even hide from rescuers out of fear of strangers or paranoia. Overachievers like physicists and physicians and top athletes are not going to stick to the trail because the trail is for average people and they are not average. That's a good one. Their success in the human world has a potential dangerous byproduct of them being overconfident. The world of humans smiles on them, but the world of nature is immune and impartial. They get too bold and they want the challenges themselves. They are like Icarus going too near the sun. It is not arrogance on their part is naivety and overconfidence. 7, there could be something luring off the path. This might be spirits luring them, etc. Their own ancestors are the spirits that are calling them into the wilderness so they can connect with them without interruption of living people. In Africa, some cultures, people go into the wilderness to reconnect with their ancestors to get answers on what to do about issues in their current life. But ancestors can cause mischief in a person's life if they feel they are being neglected by the living relatives. In the Western world, it is not in tune with ancestral beliefs, so if the phenomena is real, then ancestors are feeling very negligent and are calling their living relatives away from their busy city lives. I'm speculating, but the forces doing this are not good forces. 7b, the descendants of American colonizers might be being lured by the spirits of ancient First Peoples who are not happy with what has been done to their land and their people and want revenge. 8, it is a fact that there are some very dangerous illegal drugs leading to psychosis out there in the world, and sometimes that these people who are drinking might be spiked. It might be in the bottled water that they drink too. This should be investigated. Yeah, I suppose. But I think if someone's hiking in the woods for days, that's not an issue. 9, maybe whatever is luring the hikers to get lost in the wilderness requires water to drink, which is why they are often found near water. So there's therefore some sort of living thing that hunts them. Not sure. Or maybe they're concealed in the water. Or maybe they need the water for their machines. Or maybe they need the water to change the weather. Thoughts? To add to this investigation side of things, to try to work out what is going on with these people, apart from blood tests, every person or corpse found in the unusual cases should, if possible, have brain scans done to rule out epilepsy or brain abnormalities. Good idea, but brain scans are expensive. And when a person is found deep in the wilderness in a small county with limited funds, there's a chance they won't even get an autopsy done, let alone brain scans and all these things. Because the viewpoint of these jurisdictions is that it's just a missing persons case. It's nothing else. Finally, I'd like to say that I'm so sorry to hear about your son and send my condolences. You were an outstanding father and he was an outstanding son, and what you must hold on to. I also know you feel like your country is weakening and there is confusion about Afghanistan and what it means to the American way of life. That it ended that way, but understand that the Western way is just too attractive to people, particularly young adults throughout the world, who want modern things and who do not want to be stuck in the past with stultifying religions ruling their lives. Good points. And I read you these things because I want your mind to open up. And for you to say, wow, I never thought of that. Yeah, I guess it could be. And then when you're out reading your next magazine and you normally would skip an area, don't skip it. Look at it, read it, entertain the ideas at least. All right. First case I'm going to talk to you about is one I've sat on for a long time. Haven't said anything about it, but I will. February 24th, 2019, the Sierra Nevada mountains of California. Captain Matthew Kraft, 24 years old, and he was in the Marines. He was assigned to the 1st Battalion, 29 Palms, Camp Pendleton. He was a platoon leader. He was a graduate of the Citadel. Folks, let me tell you, that is a committed person. His dad said that since Matthew was 10 years old, he knew he wanted to be a Marine. Wow. He kept himself in absolutely phenomenal physical condition. Everything he did was about being a better leader. Well, he had some time off and he started a hike up in the Sierras. He told his dad when he'd be out, which would be March 3rd, March 4th. and that if he wasn't out, to call the sheriff in that area. He rented a Jeep, and he drove up into an area, and this is on the eastern side of the Sierra Nevada mountains off Highway 395. It's an area I know really well. It is a picturesque area, to say the least. Mountains come up abruptly up to 14,000 feet in that area. There's a average height is about 12,000, and it's all granite. And the searchers on this case said it was like all granite everywhere. Yeah. Well, Matthew stopped his car at the Kearsage trailhead, Kearsage, near Independence, California. Parked his Jeep there, took off. And a lot of this was on skis and snowshoes. The search area was like a giant piece of granite. The searcher said it multiple times. In prior years, Matthew had hiked the 40 Peaks region, and he had also hiked the Cahos Trail in New Hampshire, Cahos, C-A-H-O-S. And he loved natural parks, he loved the outdoors. Like I said, he was in phenomenal shape. As the searchers started off, they used CHP helicopter. They used the Marine Warfare Training Center in Bridgeport. And they used the National Park Service in Kings Canyon, Sequoia National Park, and Yosemite. Kings Canyon and Sequoia kind of split the difference on where he might have been. They said that they found some areas that had had avalanches. That's not a big deal. That happens all the time. But it was such a vast area to search. It was almost unsearchable. Much of the trail was covered by snow, but he had a map and he kind of knew where he was supposedly going. Well, after a week, the searchers called it off. There were multiple searches after this. Never was found. His backpack was never found. Nothing was ever found. The Marines felt 100% certain he was deceased. They categorized him as deceased. At the time he disappeared, he was a first lieutenant, and posthumously they promoted him to captain. Matthew's story is a classic example of why you should carry a personal locator beacon. In Matthew's case, even this area, there aren't many people that hike it in the winter. It's just too difficult. There's a good chance if he went even moderately off the trail that no one would ever find him. Without a personal locator beacon, he'd never be found. If he broke his leg, guaranteed you're not going to move. You're going to stay right there and die. So, you probably never heard of it. And I can't tell you how many times I've been told by viewers like you, yeah, Dave, I'm sorry, but we never even knew these existed. Yeah, they do. So the entire search area was between 9,000 and 11,500 feet. So I lived at 6,000 feet for 10 years. I got in really good shape. Even I, going to 11,000 feet, it kicked my butt. So, but Matthew was tough as it goes. Didn't bother him. Matthew Kraft, 24 years old, was never found. Last heard from on December 24th, 2019. Kearsage, Kearsage trailhead on the eastern side of the Sierra by Independence, California, off Highway 395. What I want to do This is Matthew. His family was completely distraught, heartbroken over his loss. Like I said, he covered the 40 Peaks area in the White Mountains, and he had hiked the Cahos Trail from New Hampshire to Canada many times. CHP searched the area with FLIR, and they were so thorough in their search, they found a big mass of something that was warm They sent searchers in and they found a hibernating bear. That's some good work by the CHP, California Highway Patrol. Now, this is a map where Matthew vanished from. This is Highway 395 on the eastern part of the Sierra Nevadas. There's a city called Lone Pine. Independence is right here. You go west from Independence and you go up into this area called the Onion Valley where the Kearsage Trailhead is at. Now, Kings Canyon National Park is here. Sequoia National Park is here. And further north is Yosemite. The Paradise Fire at Sequoia this year, where they had to protect a lot of the big trees, is right here. Walker's Fire was there. And the Windy Fire at Sequoia is right here. So all of this is still burning today. And the Manzar National Historic Site is right here. So you kind of get the feeling we are in the Sierra. This whole region right through here is just giant, giant mountains. A lot of areas have snow on them all year. So, that is the Matthew Kraft story. A good soul. We lost a good man. And needless to say, during these times, Matthew would have been greatly appreciated because we need leaders. I'm sure his family is destroyed. I feel for him. Next case involves a woman that disappeared, 32 years old. Lauren Thompson, missing January 10th, 2019. It's about a month before Matthew disappeared. 2:04 p.m. from Rock Hill, Texas. She was a mom with 3 kids. The kids were staying with her mom at the time she was missing or gone. This incident happened at about 2:04 p.m. in far eastern Texas in Panola County. Lots of rural areas, lots of water. Well, she calls her mom at about that time and says, "Hey mom, I want to talk to the kids real quick." And mom says they're not there. And she says, "Well, can you tell them and tell dad that I love them very much and that if I get out of this, I'm never using drugs again?" Mom didn't know what she meant or what she was referring to. But she had a conversation with her mom, hung up, and then called 911. She called police dispatch and said that she was being shot at and chased. And the dispatch heard something like she was running. Then they were getting pings on her phone to get a location where she was, and they were dispatching deputies to the area. They finally got to the area and they found her car stuck in a ditch on a drill site location. Nobody was there. But they started to search anyhow. In quite a distance from their car, they found one of her shoes, later identified as her shoe, in the forest with no tracks around it. That was strange. Now, the original 911 call went on, and the dispatcher said it sounded like she came to an abrupt stop, gasped, took a deep breath, phone went dead. So there was a lengthy search for Lauren by deputies at the area around the car. Well, a man returned to the car in another car while the police were there and said, "Oh, where's Lauren?" They explained that what happened. And she said, he said, "I was with her in the car when we got stuck. And I told her I was going to my house to get some chains to get us out. I told her to stay in the car." There was some paint transfer on the car. And the thought was that maybe she hit somebody, but the guy said no. The deputies cleared the man of any involvement, but the search went on. This area has water everywhere, thick woods. They brought in canines, and there was no scent that they picked up. And deputies found just the shoe. And that's peculiar to say the least about why they didn't find more. Now, this is Lauren. She still hasn't been found, and that's very, very odd. But her battery going dead on the phone at that exact moment, I think, is equally odd. Now, here's the map where she went missing. This area is the Texas border. It's that close. It's really close. This is 1794 road and road 267. And this is where a car was found in an area near a drill site, private property. This whole area, like I said, you can see the bodies of water in it. It was on Farm to Market Road 1794 at Road 267. Their mom, Lauren, has not been back. When the deputies towed the car back to Lauren's home, to her grandmother's home, it was said that the kids got really emotional thinking that their mom was coming home and she didn't. Very little about this case other than what I've just told you. The implications were at the time that maybe she got into some bad drug deal because she brought that up to her mom on the phone. But the oddest thing to me, and this is very odd, is that the Panola County Sheriffs allowed Lauren's parents to listen to the 911 tape. But they wouldn't give the tape to the public or to news agencies. What they also did is they gave the tape to the FBI to enhance it, but they didn't say what part of the tape they were interested in being enhanced. And the parents didn't understand it either. And since the time the FBI got it and returned it, they still haven't released it. So what was she being chased from, by whom, to where? And when you have multiple people in the woods like that chasing somebody, if there was one person chasing her, canine should have picked up that scent, especially since that point of the shoe. But how did the shoe get there if there were no tracks in the area? It's a puzzling scenario. Lauren Thompson, 32 years old, January 10th, 2019. And Matthew Kraft, February 24th, 2019. Those are the two cases so far. The next case is bizarre to say the least. Daniel Robinson, 24 years old, just like Matthew Kraft, missing June 23rd, 2021, this year in June, just north of Buckeye, Arizona. He was a hydrogeologist working for a company called Matrix Engineers. A hydrogeologist studies groundwater. Say somebody wants to build a well, they go out there and they'll do the studies on it. Well, he was employed by 2.5 years by Matrix in that Phoenix area. He was from Columbia, South Carolina. And he had a bachelor's degree when he was hired by Matrix in that Phoenix area. Steady employee, good person, got along with people. So the incident happened about 50 miles west of Phoenix. At about 9 a.m. on June 23rd, 2021, he went to a job site and he met a fellow worker. Fellow worker said that Daniel, from the time he drove up, seemed preoccupied and looking at the desert, but there was nothing out there. And the conversation was fractured. It wasn't smooth. He had a tough time paying attention. He kept looking away. He just wasn't acting normal. And then at about 9 a.m., he suddenly just turned and walked back towards his Jeep Renegade, got in, started the engine, waved to his partner, and drove off. And he drove further west into further desert. And his coworker said he was stunned that he left like that. The only thing he could think is that he must be sick and he's going to call in sick. But he wasn't sick and he didn't call in sick. And later that day he was reported as missing because he wasn't answering his phone. Peculiar, to say the least. So his dad was notified, people were notified, and the Buckeye, Arizona police responded. They put drones, helicopters, into the area, found nothing. It's about a 100-degree day out in the desert. So weeks later, 4 miles from the job site on private property, a rancher finds Daniel's 2012 Jeep Renegade rolled over on the side. Let's go through this. So this is Daniel. Good student, good worker, reliable, just an all-around good soul. So the Renegade was rolled over on its side on this little kind of like gush, a little indentation in the road or in the landscape, and 4 miles from the job site, an area that had been covered multiple times during the search. Now they start searching again at the Renegade and they find a skull there. They thought, oh my gosh, we found Daniel. No, they just found another body. Another massive search with cadaver dogs. Nothing. So Daniel's dad hires a private investigator named Jeff McGrath. Jeff has a close look and digs deep into the Jeep Renegade. The airbags were deployed. The computer said that the crash occurred at 1 p.m. the day he disappeared, 4 hours after he was last seen. The ignition had been turned on 46 times after that crash and drove 11 miles from the initial crash site. And the investigator said the damage didn't match the terrain. Interestingly, you can kind of see, this is where the car is found, but you can kind of see the indentation in the ground right here. But I'm sorry, that is a big obstacle to miss in the desert if you're flying over it. Because you can see there's not a lot of ground cover in the desert. So I have a tough time with that one. Now, if you look at this, you can kind of see the location where the job site was. This is Phoenix over here. And this is an area right here, not far from the Hasayampa River, the only river in the entire area, which I thought was odd. In fact, the description actually says the river's there. So, what happened? Canines no scent. The car is found in an area that was previously searched. How did helicopters and the sheriff miss the car? And better question is, what happened to Daniel? I've told you before, in many of the missing 411 cases, that the victims have some kind of disability or genetic abnormalities since birth. I've said this many times. It wasn't until I was into my second hour researching this case that I realized that Daniel was born without a right hand. I thought, wow. Digging even further, I found that the deputies found all of Daniel's clothes that he was wearing on June 23rd in his car. The indication being that he left the car without any clothes on. How can that be? Why would that be? So, I've told you about this stuff so many times. And some people say, oh, you know, well, it sure as heck isn't a weather issue. It was 100 degrees that day. So he's not taking his clothes off because he has hypothermia. He's not in that outlying community because the police searched that area with FLIR and didn't come up with a hit. He hasn't been found. His dad responded from the East Coast, and I could feel his dad's pain. He searched for his son multiple times. Got many people out there into the desert and tried to comb it and did an admirable job. And if Daniel was around, he'd be proud of you, Mr. Robinson. This case is very odd. How many times over the last year have I talked to you about people missing from cars? Many. How many times have I told you about clothes being taken off or missing? Many. So, if somebody's telling you that there is nothing unusual about this, people have no idea what they're talking about. These are normal disappearances. These are like 1 in every 1,000 disappearances that match what I'm telling you. It's not very common. I'm not surprised that small jurisdictions like Buckeye, Arizona, or Panola County, Texas, where Lauren disappeared, don't understand what I'm telling you. These are small jurisdictions that suddenly have a big case fall in their lap. And it's not easy to manage. And these small jurisdictions don't have the funds to put on huge searches. And they're looking at the case from their own locale. They're not looking at the case from 30,000 feet like I am, where I'm looking all around the world at things that match what we're talking about. I can't go in and approach these law enforcement people and explain to them how this matches other cases. They'd laugh at me. They wouldn't believe it. They'd say, hey, mind your own business. I just know cops. That's what they do. And it would take me multiple hours to educate them about what I know. And most of them, understandably, the majority of them wouldn't believe me. So it would take maybe days of laying down facts before it finally sunk in that, hey, this is happening. So, desert disappearances are not unusual. Desert disappearances happen just like mountain disappearances. There's a lot of weird things that have happened in the desert. It sounds as though Daniel was having some kind of psychological impact to his psyche at the time that he disappeared. And that was described by his coworker. Couldn't concentrate, kept looking. What was he looking at in the desert? What was he concerned about out there? Did he see something that his coworker couldn't see? This has happened many times. Even people in cars, one person sees one thing and the other person doesn't. So did he see something? Lastly, in a lot of cases that involve strange phenomena, people have reported being called, like, hey, come here, we need you, whatever. Was he called for some reason? I don't know. Daniel Robinson, Buckeye, Arizona, just north of Buckeye, west of Phoenix. And the case deserves to have a lot of publicity. And whatever I can do, I'm going to publicize the heck out of it for that family. I don't know where Daniel is, but I hope they find him quickly. Thank you very much for being here. As long as YouTube doesn't kick me off, I'll be here later. I'll bring you new cases when I can. I hope that these cases resonate with you for their importance, profile points, and please pass this video on to friends. Give it 2 thumbs up if you like it, and please make sure you're subscribed to the channel. I probably get 50 people every week telling me, hey, I got unsubscribed. I I know that half the people that write the comments on the YouTube, they aren't subscribed. So if you are, great, I appreciate it. If you're not, please get yourself subscribed and post it on your social media. I greatly appreciate your support. And our village is growing. Thank you.